Good morning, brothers, and, well, good afternoon. Common mistake of clergy. Good afternoon, brothers and sisters.
Good afternoon.
On behalf of the council and the deacons and members of our faith community at Center Congregational Church, where we are now gathered, I greet you and welcome you to this, our 11th annual Martin Luther King service. Although this service is an annual one, it is anything but traditional or habitual or routine, especially in times such as this, as Mordecai said to Esther. I pray that this worship service will be for you one of remembrance, one of honor, and one of inspiration. I would like to thank numerous organizations for the planning and for the sponsorship of this service. There are with us and supporting us the Community Equity Collaborative of the Brattleboro area, the Lost River Racial Justice, the Root Social Justice Center, and their Youth for Change, a youth-led group. Also here is the Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity, and the Windham branch, the Windham County branch of the NAACP. Also here is the Brattleboro area for Interfaith Youth Group, who are putting together the spaghetti supper that is downstairs and which I invite you to following this celebratory service. Also gathered are the state senators Becca Balint and Jeanette White, and state representatives Michael Mawaricki and Emily Kornheiser and Sarah Coffey. We thank all of you for being with. I'm just new to the area, so I haven't gotten all of the pronunciations yet. I'm coming from South Africa and still even learning the pronunciation of our towns. Please forgive me. We are fortunate to have with us the community choir led by Peter Amidon and a special guest performer, Samirah Evans, and her youth vocal trio. This afternoon, our special speaker is Kiah Morris, who has come from Bennington to be with us. And I saw, and I'm very pleased to mention, that Nader Hashim is also here with us and will be speaking. It, I know, has not been easy for all of our guests and our speakers to be here as well, as it has not been easy for many of you to gather here given the snowstorm. But we thank God that you are here and that you have traveled safely, and we are together to worship. May I just remind the congregation to mute or turn off your cell phones so they do not disturb the service or any of the performers. If you need to use any of the restrooms, you can leave, exit out this door, and just turn to your right, and there is bathrooms on your left as you go through the double doors. And there are 3 exits, one at the back and 2 exits down on the floor level. And for those in the balcony, you may exit out the front here and also exit out the back. It is my pleasure to greet and to gather all you. Let us together worship God. Our opening hymn this afternoon is hymn number 593, Lift Every Voice and Sing. Will you sing with me?
the wine of the world we forget you. Shadowed beneath the hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
So I'm not in the program. I'm Lisa Sparrow, pastor of the Guilford Church, and I also want to welcome you, but I'd also like to make a few comments, kind of begging a little bit of dispensation from all of you. First, I'd like to celebrate the fact that we just sang the African American anthem. I want you to know that's what that was, and many of us take it for granted, but it is something that's deeply rooted in our African American history. 11 years ago, we began doing this service. It was in response to very hateful acts in Brattleboro, and I think we had high hopes that if we just reminded people about Martin Luther King Jr. and his words, that we would rise out of some of these acts in Brattleboro. And 11 years later, I would say that as I look out, I know that many of you work almost every day to make Vermont a welcoming and better place. We still have a lot of work to do, and we will hear from other people about what that work is. I also wanted to mention that when we first started this service, we had a habit of bringing in people who actually marched with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and it was quite touching. But as we've moved forward, we realized that it's more important to hear the voices of African American people in our community. Their singing voices, their speaking voices, their reading voices, their thoughts, so that we could take in and be allies as white people, for those of us who are white people too, for that work. So we've done our best today to try to have those who lead us be people of color, people who have gifts to bring, people from whom we have learned. And I will say that inevitably, because of weather and other things, that is not entirely true, but we're trying more and more to have this be a celebration of all the people of color who live and work and contribute so beautifully to our community. The first two people who will be reading today are Curtis Reed Jr., who is the Executive Director of Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity, and Lily Quintero, who's representing the Brattleboro Area Interfaith Youth Group, who works and does service trips in places where racial justice is needed. I would like to welcome them both up here.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal.
I have a dream that one day on Red Hills, Georgia, the children of former slaves and the children of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood.
I have a dream that my 4 little children will someday live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by their character.
I have a dream that one day in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers.
This will be a day when all God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside.
From the hilltops of New Hampshire, from the mighty mountains of New York, from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, from the slopes of California, and the Stone Mountain in Georgia, from every hill and molehill in Mississippi, let freedom ring.
When we let freedom ring from every village and hamlet, from every state and city, we will speed the day when God's children, black and white, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing, "Free at last." Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last.
Three days after the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in 1968, performer Nina Simone and her band played at the Westbury Music Festival on Long Island, New York. They performed "Why the King of Love is Dead," a song they had just learned, written by their bass player Gene Taylor in reaction to King's death. Once upon this planet Earth lived a man of humble birth, preaching love and freedom for his fellow man. He was dreaming of a day peace would come to earth and stay. Preaching love and freedom for his fellow man. Turn the other cheek, he plead peace, and love your neighbor was his creed. Pain, humiliation, and death he did not dread. With his Bible at his side, from his foes he did not hide. It's hard to think that this great man is dead. Will the murders never cease? Are they men or are they beasts? What do they ever hope? What do they ever hope to gain? Will our country stand or fall? Is it late? Is it too late for us all? And did Martin Luther King just die in vain? 'Cause he had seen the mountaintop, and he knew he could not stop. Always living with the threat of death ahead. Folks, you'd better stop and think, 'cause we're headed for the brink. What will happen now? The King of Love is dead. He was for equality for all the people, you and me. Full of love and goodwill, hate was he has seen the mountaintop, and he knew he could not stop. Always living with the threat of death ahead. Folks, you better stop and think and feel again, 'cause we're headed for the brink. What's gonna happen now? What's gonna happen now? The King of Love is dead. I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. And I wish I could break all the chains holding me. And I wish I could say what I know I should say. Say 'em loud, say 'em clear, for the whole wide world to hear. Now I'd like to take this time to invite 3 lovely young ladies who are going to help me sing this song. I appoint them as my youth vocal trio. Please welcome Miss Veronica Stevens. Keep your hands together for Miriam Joa. And last but not least, Miss Annabelle
support change.
I'm Z Muhammad.
I'm Trinity Strickland.
And I'm Antonia Ricardo.
And we're with Youth for Change from the Social Justice Center. Okay, and we're gonna say some words, read some stuff. I'm gonna read a poem that I wrote, and some of you have probably heard it. I read it at the Black Lives Matter flag raising at BUHS, so I'm gonna, yeah, okay. I am a worn out, wet piece of paper. Words after words, the ink slowly sinks into my skin. I'm a burned old video film. Showing after showing, the heat feels like a fire within all my body. I'm a dusty, teared, hardcover book. Eyes on me, over and over. The eyes see through me like a window, and it pains me. I'm a black kid, full of fear. Shooting after shooting, the bullet that hit them hits me where it hurts the most, the heart. And I am the one with the bleeding bullet wound. The tears they shed, I'm shedding too. I fear every day I go outside, I won't come back in. The silver shining bars on the cell that they want me in are calling my name. That bullet sound is ringing in my ear. It causes anxiety. Why does my skin make such a barrier for the life I am living? Brown, brown, brown is beautiful, is important. People pin us down. Somehow we push, we are stuck in the ground below. We are so low, yet so high percentage-wise in every negative statistic. Hush for a minute, slow down. I need a minute to think about my people and breathe. But you've taken that right away too. We've said it before, I can't breathe. How can the air we breathe be taken away from us? We fought a fight and still continue to. We rise, we march. Just like how we marched for rights, but just civil rights, and still that was too hard. Matter. We matter just as much as anyone else. Let us think back to how Earth evolved. Everything mattered. All of it was matter. Existence. We formed from the smallest bits and became bigger. Awake, awake, alive, alive. Too much time has gone by to live with your eyes closed and ignore the injustice. Too much time has gone by to unsee the plain sight. Lives. Lives of the world. You know, we call ourselves the minority, but look around. Brown makes up the population around the world. A world so broken, yearning to be fixed. TV clicked on, instantly off. Where is the new in the news? Nothing is new, only repetition of yesterday's, presently, and tomorrow's hurt. Where is the good in the world? I wonder. Black. I continue to feel the black and blue blistered bruises, only getting bruised worse and bluer. But only when it is dark enough can you see the stars.
Most of you may know me. I am a well-known advocate for the Root Social Justice Center. I am someone from Youth for Change. I am the co-coordinator of the BIPOC caucus. And I don't know where to begin. I mean, my story is just so complicated.
being a person of color and being trans. I was just adopted over Christmas break. And it didn't hit me until after what I was permanently staying in, what kind of town I'm staying in, and it hurts when you think about it. Just 2 weeks ago, I was racially profiled by a cop walking to therapy, and I've never been more scared in my life. And you know, I go to therapy and I'm like, what do I do? Like, this is every day too. Not necessarily by a police officer, but by my peers. By ignorant white people who look at me and automatically call me a nigger because they don't care enough to get to know me beyond my skin color. And I've spoken at so many different public events before, and I'm not sure that I can ever get my point across. I'm not sure that no matter what I say, what we say, there are some people who are still going to choose to not listen. And it hurts the most that, you know, I have siblings that are being raised by white people, and they look exactly like me. And they'll never get to know their true heritage. They'll never get to know that they're Puerto Rican. They'll never get to know that, you know, the stories of our people. And it's painful. So I ask all of you today to look deep into your hearts and try to find the trust in us youth, us POC youth, us trans youth, us queer youth, and just remind yourselves that we are the future. Thank you.
I'm visibly nervous right now, so you have to bear with me. I'll make this short and sweet. I came to Brattleboro 5, 6, 7 years ago or so, and I was ready to move to another town and just like go with the flow and not really do much with my community and such. I went through middle school and high school and all this. And then I was invited to a Youth for Change meeting by Z. And I fit the criteria. I'm a youth. So I was like, sure, why not? What's the worst that could happen? And I realized that like I had made probably one of the best choice in my life, one of many, to attend this meeting. Oh my God. Because because from that meeting on, I really gathered a good sense of community. Because honestly, I could say that I've never really felt connected to anything in my life, really, to any people, to anything. And from that meeting on, I realized that there are many people out there who are there for me and care about me, and that I mean something. And I don't know, I just really want to say thank you to everyone who's taken me in and accepted me for how loud and obnoxious and like in your face and just like unbearable at times that I can be, and just accepting me and caring for me like never before. So, thank you.
I don't know how many of you know, but we have a new-ish town manager, and he came to town and actually joined the Community Equity Collaborative right away. He's been a really active member. We're very fortunate. He is a white guy. We will talk about that. But I'd like you to welcome Peter Elwell.
I get to follow the Youth for Change. Thank you so much. If you're a white person, and most of us are, and you haven't yet read the book Waking Up White, please do that very soon. If you're someone who has read the book Waking Up White, you know what I mean. It's a memoir written by a middle-class white woman from Winchester, Massachusetts, who in the middle of her life had an awakening to the fact that it is not sufficient to not be a racist, or not sufficient to do good work. In our interpersonal relationships, those actions matter. But if we are to achieve greater racial and social equity in our communities and throughout our society, we, especially white people and men, people of financial means, people in positions of authority, must recognize systemic racism and work to eliminate it. You can get a copy of Waking Up White at Brooks Memorial Library, or you can buy one down at Everyone's Books, but please, if you haven't read it, read it soon. Today, it's my honor to introduce our featured speaker, Kiah Morris. We need to learn from Kiah's experience. It was a tragedy to lose her leadership in Montpelier as a victim, not just of hateful behavior of individuals, but also of the failure of our laws and our systems to protect against such racism. Kiah was originally from Chicago and now lives in Bennington. She was the first person of color elected to represent Bennington County in the state legislature, and the second African-American woman in our state's history elected to the legislature. Kiah is an award-winning trainer, speaker, and presenter. She is also an accomplished actress, singer, dancer, and arts manager. Her work focuses on amplifying voices of the oppressed on issues of human rights and social justice. Kiah's story of success and struggle has been covered by the media worldwide, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, Essence Magazine, The Hill, the Canadian Broadcasting Company, BBC Radio, Vice Media, and many more. The short movie that we are about to see was prepared and presented by Huffington Post.
If there is racism in Vermont, it is not the black woman who's bringing the racism into the state. It is our systems. It is our society. It is our failure to act. I shouldn't have been the only black woman serving in the legislature. There were only 2 women of color in the entire 180-person body. And I couldn't find anyone to replace me at this point in time. And that's just wrong. When it came time for re-election, that is when we started to see some of the uglier rhetoric that was really circulating around the nation. And so we're talking about 2016. It was during that crucial presidential election.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
And we found ourselves in this situation where I had become a target by some of the white nationalist groups here within the state. So there were vandalism acts that happened at our home. There was a break-in into our home in the middle of the night while we were sleeping. There were swastikas painted on the trees in the woods where I walk with my dog and my son. And all these things started building in this sort of aggregate. And we went to law enforcement, and the answer was, we're sorry. Sorry it's happening to you. Good luck. Take some safety courses. Get some cameras and extra security at your home.
So I've known Kiah for a couple of years. We've worked in tandem on a couple of pieces of legislation. So we'd talked and had a decent relationship. And Kiah's dealt with so much in her life and so much since she's been here, especially as a black woman. You're already hypervisible just by existing here. So you're always on display, and everything that you do is amplified.
When you think of your elected officials, you think of these gatekeepers, and that's not how we are here. It's a very much an open government. You can literally walk into our state building with no real security checks of any sort. You don't even go through a metal detector. And you'll run into your electeds everywhere, at the grocery store, at your kid's soccer game, so many different places. And so there's this openness and vulnerability that heightens this level of danger. We were able to get some really small measures through the civil court system. The criminal justice system really wasn't able to do anything, bring any charges. I was seeing changes in my health. I was seeing changes in our community. I was seeing so many different things that were really weighing on me. And I knew that there was more work to be done, but it was always sort of weighing in my mind as to what will be the next step. And then the harassment began again. This really dangerous confluence happened where a local individual who decided to run for office in a completely different district chose to use my face and my name as saying that I was the catalyst behind all of the gun legislation. Even though I didn't write the bills, I didn't sponsor the bills, I didn't even present the bills on the floor. I was one of 180 votes. But they chose to raise me up very specifically. And it was really sad and frightening, because knowing that in those 2 years since when this harassment began, that using the Second Amendment argument became a pathway for people to get connected to these ideologies and these groups. So it starts with a thing like, aren't you so mad they're trying to ban bump stocks? To, don't you also hate the fact that these Mexicans are taking all of our jobs? And it created an entire community of individuals who were now engaging in this type of xenophobia and this really frightening rhetoric. And I still was not able to see how I would be able to be protected. And then we received a death threat. This was a threat that my young son saw. And we brought it to our law enforcement, and they sat on it for 3 weeks without turning it in for forensics. And it was at that point that I said, you know, it's just not going to be worth it for me to continue to do this when I don't see the protections that anyone deserves, let alone an elected official, but any individual, the dignity that people deserve to be able to do their jobs and not have to worry about what may come or who they may encounter.
Kiah is one of the toughest people I've ever met. It's unlike her to ask for help. She contacted me and was like, Tabitha, it's my son and it's my husband now. She said, it's one thing for me to be out there to do this. For them to threaten me, that's fine. But now they're coming at my family. As a parent, that resonated with me. Like, that's a line you don't cross. Happened since she came out with it about not running was people saying, you know, she's just letting them win. No, they won because they were allowed to go for 2 years doing this to her. What are we doing as a system that they were allowed to do that? There's a difference between political dissent and hate, and she doesn't have to put up with hate.
I think that my story has allowed for us to start asking really hard questions about who is at the table when we are looking for our elected officials to represent us, and what are the barriers that they face, not only to running for office, but remaining within office.
It's always the onus on the people of color to put our lives on the line for progress. Why do we keep having to put our bodies and our lives in mortal danger for something that was supposed to have been resolved in the 60s, was supposed to have been resolved with the Emancipation Proclamation?
In totality, it's a pretty enormous ask for anyone to say, you keep going forward, because if you don't, then they win. For me, I feel that I win because I chose to take my life back. I feel that I win because I'm taking a stand, and I'm saying that this is not acceptable. The ways that we've been functioning, the ways that our state government is functioning, it is not something that any of us should find comfort in. And so when I chose to do that, I win, and we all win.
Kiah was a public official. She was a victim of overt acts of racism, both publicly and privately. The media covered those acts, and so we know her story. But Kiah's story is also the story of countless other people of color throughout Vermont and right here in our community. The harm of racism is not just caused by visible acts of extremism and hatred, but far more insidious harm is caused by systemic racism in the rules, structures, and customs that have resulted from over 300 years of white-dominated American society. It is those rules, structures, and customs we must work together to change. We can and we must do better. Kiah is here today to help us understand more clearly the imperative of this moment, and the necessity for us to work together actively on anti-racism initiatives in Brattleboro and in Bennington and throughout Vermont. Please help me welcome the Honorable Kiah Morris.
Thank you so much, Peter, for that. That was gorgeous and lovely, and I'm truly grateful. I know you all just sat down, but I have to say something. I want to make sure before we move any further that we acknowledge and we honor the youth that have contributed here today. Woo! I want to recognize the names of Veronica Stevens, Miriam Diallo, Annabelle Theus, Z. Muhammad, Trinity Strickland, and Antonio Ricardo. If you are able to, please stand and give these kids a round. Thank you for that, because it's so important. We're here today for them. This is the work that we have not done, that we need to do for their sake. So the message I'm going to deliver you today is, in and of itself, a message of love. This is going to be a really hard conversation. Let us not forget that Dr. King died at a moment when his voice rang with such clarity and such critique, unlike anything we had heard up until that point in time. And it was at that moment of pure declaration that the ways that we are functioning must end, that his light was snuffed out. So we're here today to talk about how we're going to change that course. I tweeted a thing today. In my tweet, I said, quote, "I don't want to see your clever MLK memes today. It doesn't mean a thing if you aren't having this conversation year-round. These adrenaline shots of social justice conversations on this day are detrimental when the works of your hands are empty for the other 364. Hashtag stop pimping MLK. My meaning is plain. If you are not actively working towards dismantling systemic racism, economic inequality, bigotry, sexism, and more every day, I am uninterested in your platitudes. If today's conversation is not relevant and important on any other day than today, then folks might as well go about calling themselves Easter, Christmas anti-racists. I'm not here to recount my pain, the trauma that my family has endured, nor the repugnant injustices that are all on our minds at this exact moment. And I know that it's hard to go without hearing some echoes of Dr. King today, so I will give you a little taste. Here's one that people know well. It might as well be a biblical verse. Dr. King once famously said, "The arc of the moral universe is long," let me hear you finish it, "but it bends towards justice," right? He said those words a lifetime ago, and yet here we are with worse inequalities than we had during those times. We may not see our brethren fired upon with hoses or set on fire, but we do see them shot in cold blood, starved for food, poisoned by our environment, segregated and trapped in our schools, and inhumanely incarcerated. So how long is this arc supposed to be?
When is the aim true? Or better yet, when does someday become today? If we are still looking at some undefined point at an uncertain future, why do those who benefit from the slow, guided tour into justice get to decide the course and the timing? Since slavery, Black people have been told to wait for heaven to find our peace, find our joy, and more. Don't resist, don't run, don't rise up, and don't fight. All of society will be torn asunder if we move too quickly towards course correction. Entire populations are told to accept that knife that's lodged in their side and to wait for their turn to find healing. The hope is that in this long journey towards justice, that the wound will not become infected and that the wounded can learn to live with the pain while others enjoy the comforts of an unspoiled life. Do not fool yourselves into believing that this is the only option available. Currently, I feel the answer to the long arc of justice is, as we accept it, is that some members of our society are relegated to half-lives, where we were told to keep the knife in place because the people who hold the power to remove it are uncomfortable and unrehearsed at living under any other conditions. It begs the question, what was the slow movement towards white supremacy and dominance that indigenous peoples were to become acclimated to? Did the colonizers and imperialists and murderous pilgrims create a 10-point plan for a 30-year transition to dominance and tyranny over our First Nations brethren? Were the Africans gradually ripped from their homelands over a series of subtle, forced migrations to acclimate a people into a new world order? Were Japanese communities encouraged to consider moving into internment camps over the course of several months and several community dialogues? Please share with me the stories of the Mexicans who agreed to be massacred and have their land stolen to create the southwestern regions of this nation, as long as the actions were assured to only impact future generations. Oppressed people have never been given the luxury of time to have their entire worldview and very ways of living torn asunder and be remade by somebody else's hands. So when we come to you and say, the work must begin today, you must move beyond any apprehension or fear of personal pain to do what is necessary and what your very conscience requires. Our current societal, legal, educational, and economic models are murderous. There is no friendly, palatable way to say it. The failure to progress towards a moral society breeds lethality for those crushed under the weight of oppression. You cannot stand there and say that there are no options for change because the legal parameters that we hold up as gospel were designed to centralize power and marginalize free people. There is no justice to be found in a system that is too afraid to challenge itself. There is no equality in communities where the people wait for someone else to say what is needed. I am forever grateful for the clear, poignant condemnations, encouragements, and critiques that so many have shared about my story. And if you are not saying these things publicly, at your select board and city council meetings, at your nonprofit board meetings, and to your colleagues, it does not fall on deaf ears, but on no ears at all. Do not hesitate any longer. So again, I challenge you. Who must wait for a better day to do this work? The gross application of oppressive power took no delicacies or considerations as it seized our planet and sought the erasure of entire populations. We can and we must dismantle these systems with equal strength and ferocious love as an active verb, not just a meme or a bumper sticker. Some of you may be aware, this year the legislature seeks to pass H3, the Ethnic and Social Equity in Schools Bill. What an amazing opportunity for our state to place itself in a leadership position to the rest of the nation. But do you know the story of why this bill didn't pass last session? This bill came to be from the hard work and efforts of the Vermont Coalition for Ethnic and Social Equity in Schools Coalition, a multi-sector alliance of parents, educators, activists, and social equity advocates from across the state. This coalition brought this important bill to the legislature and against all odds got it heard, pressed, and passed through the House of Representatives. The leadership team, made mostly of women of color, mothers, aunties, grandmothers, negotiated with the Agency of Education, the most powerful entity in our state educational system, and the Vermont School Board Association to present the legislature with consensus language. They went head on against the power structures and made a clear pathway towards passage and adoption. But for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. See, this is the natural law as we've been taught. In this case, the power rested in the chair of the Senate Education Committee, Philip Baruth, and in the President pro tempore, Tim Ash. Now remember that the policy, as passed by the House, was consensus language, meaning that all parties had agreed to all of the components in it and believed it to be the best path forward. But as the patriarch of this committee, the chair refused to honor the language and required that it be pared down in ways that would deem it essentially ineffective. Again, this was consensus language, approved by the people charged with actual implementation of the work. And in this seat of power, they refused consideration unless his demands were met. All of the members of the consensus committee were women, and again, I lift up the truth that the architects of this effort were women of color. And in this moment, the white man who yielded the most power chose to use it to decimate their efforts, remake their work, and insult their legacy. This bill would die in conference committee because the chair placed an unthinkable demand on the table. The amputated bill could only pass if a provision was added to provide free college tuition for kids at private schools to participate in the statewide dual enrollment program. Yes, the same programs put into place to reduce inequitable outcomes at our underfunded public schools, weaponized against efforts to liberate marginalized youth across the state. Now for some, my telling this truth is very provocative and upsetting. The champions of this bill have had to live in silence about this assault on their spirits because telling the truth might upset those in power and might make them dig in their heels and once again create hateful barricades to justice and equality. See, I have the power of the pulpit, and I have your ears in this moment. Amen. And you each have the individual power to deny these abuses to ever occur again. So ask yourselves, is it loving to tell the parents of children of color in our state that the work of culturally relevant, historically significant, representational curriculum and policies is less important than providing free college tuition to kids at private schools? To impose your own ideas of what policy should look like in mockery of the diligent work at hand? Believe me when I say that this battle is far from over, and it will take a coordinated, powerful campaign to hold our government, and especially our members of the Senate who are hesitant, accountable for their use and abuse of power in this moment. This work is necessary and never should have the word fear attached to the outcome. This bill is not safe unless you are willing to link hands and hearts and ensure its safety. And as you saw from our youth earlier, that pain is real. And if you choose to ignore it, you will understand exactly what the costs are for our society. So who will fight with us? Why are we fighting these battles alone again and again? Where is the political courage of those whom we granted power to represent us? And why does that political power resemble repression, sexism, and racism in its execution? Is this the best we can do? No. 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 You are called to do this work. Not as some benevolent gesture towards an unknown populace. The people impacted by your inaction are your neighbors. They are your co-workers, your friends, your family, your fellow parishioners. There are Vermonters living in fear of their lives because of the visible manifestation of the systemic racism and bigotry that's woven into the very fabric of our society. And if and when they step up to speak their truths, like me, they too will be vilified, dismissed, and admonished for the perceived pain of the dominant culture that wishes to sweep it under the rug and protect its public image in exchange for the public that they were supposed to protect and are charged for caring for. You cannot let this happen on your watch. The time is now. Thank you.
Kiah Rose Touré, who wrote this with some students in Selma, Alabama, was the first African-American female judge in Alabama. She lives in Selma and she does educational work with students so they can learn about and remember their heritage. This song, I'm going to lift my sister up, is for all of you to join us with, please.
I
I live in Windham 4. So I was pretty excited to meet Nader Hashim last summer. He was running to be our state representative. Not only that, he was a state trooper. Not only that, he was an immigrant who'd chosen to come and live here in Vermont. I was even more excited when he was elected. And then there's the Kiah Morris story, and then I thought, oh my gosh, what have we done? So, Nader, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to send our love to you. I'd like to do a little blessing for Nader. He's still there. So we love you, and we want to bless you as you go forward into this work. Here he is.
Thank you. You know, I just want to mention, there was a young person earlier who mentioned that they were visibly nervous when they were up here, and I just want to say, you know, I'm supposed to be good at this, and I'm visibly nervous too, so it's all good. And I know that perhaps many of you folks, if not every single person in this church here, over the last few years has been watching the news, and you've asked yourselves, what exactly is happening to our country right now? And how did we get to this point? We've seen the frequency of hate crimes and harassment increase across the country, including in Vermont, as we all know. And we've seen political leaders who've either been silent or seemingly okay with this increase. And we've also seen media outlets continue to dehumanize people who are coming to this country seeking shelter and asylum. We see all this happen, and we wonder, when will it get better? When will we have a society that includes equality and compassion as the most basic and fundamental values embedded within its foundation? And we also ask ourselves, who is going to bring about this change? The answer is all of you. Everyone in this church, all of you are the people who are going to create a better future, and the people outside this church who share your views and your beliefs, all of you together will be able to create a brighter future in which people of color do not have to live in fear of harassment, and a brighter future in which equality and inclusion are indeed the basic and fundamental values of the communities. If you're here now, I genuinely believe that you have it within you to organize, lead, and stand up for racial justice. And as we're here remembering Dr. King, recall his uncanny ability to organize from the grassroots level, and recall his uncanny ability to remain steadfast and unwavering in the face of oppression, violence, and hate. The most powerful thing that all of you possess is your numbers and your voice. Use that voice and never let the sound of hate drown you out. Now, I just want to say that if standing up for racial justice is in your heart, and I think it is in everyone in this church here, there are many ways to help. I urge you to reach out to your local grassroots organizations. I know they're all represented here tonight, so I'm glad they're here. There's a lot of them, and they all fill different roles in our community. Please consider reaching out to them to see how you can help. They would love to hear from you, I'm sure. And lastly, for us legislators, I urge you to keep reaching out to your legislators and make sure that they are taking the ideas of racial equity and justice and applying it to the broad spectrum of all the work they do in Montpelier. You'll also probably hear a lot, that we're busy and we'll get back to you soon. Just keep on sending us emails. We'll get back to you, I promise. And I just want to say again, thank you all for coming out. It's literally 0 degrees outside, if not below 0 at this point. But this church is packed, so thank you. I appreciate it so much.
have a spontaneous speaker. This is Kiah Morris's husband, James Lawton.
Totally unprepared. This is not a speech. I want to just give a quick clue of how wrong the system is and how it works against people, minorities, or any oppressed people, no matter who it is. You've heard some of the story. Every time I talk, I say you've only heard less than 20% of the story, and that's the truth. That's how big this was. It was 2 years, and the nightmares still are not really over. But the most poignant thing happened that shows you how wrong the system is. Happened at Monday at the press conference. That was kind of supposed to be a jumping point for us to start doing a little bit of healing and moving forward. Now this gentleman, and he just one, but the predominant one, had done this for 2 years, except for the year that Kiah got a protection order against him. The judge saw what this person was like, and after the hearing had said that he was really worried for Kiah because this gentleman had targeted her. Now this went on for 2 years, and there are so many occasions where any law enforcement agency or anything at least have a talk with him and tell him, you know, stop, knock it up, slow it down, whatever. But what happened was he got more protection in the end than we did. Because every time he did something, oh, it's his right. We can't stop him. And they would tell us to do what we had to do to protect ourselves from him, but take no steps to protect us from him. The press conference was wrapping up. It was getting very close to the end. And this man, and I'm not even going to grace this place with his name, you can look it up, that has been intimidating, harassing, and putting my family in danger for 2 years. And brought the attention of neo-Nazis and white supremacists from everywhere, from all over the country. They used to ask us, you know, I tell people, I say, it's not him that we're so much afraid of. It's the stuff that he's bringing to us. The threats that are coming from all over the country. We had threats from Montreal. And Kiah was up speaking, and everybody saw the reaction. When she saw this man walk in the room, thinking he was just going to walk in there and take the mic away from her and tell his side of the story. He came in to a Jewish synagogue with a racist shirt on, a symbol of the racism, and his gun on his belt. How many people have been shot in synagogues this year? But you know why he could? Because it was his right. It was right to say his right to say the hateful things to my wife. It was his right to terrorize us for 2 years. And in a moment that was supposed to help us move on to some degree, he took that away from her because it was his right. And nobody in the law enforcement community, including our Attorney General, and I'm not bashing him, I'm just saying, nobody could come up with a way to stop this man. That's got to change. Everything was under the disguise or the guise of political dissent. He literally could call her the N-word as long as he said, I don't like your policies. And he was protected. And I'm going to call on the state reps and the senators and everything else. This wasn't about free speech. This was about harassment. It was about terrorizing our family. And we can't come up with something that we can criminally charge this man with when he openly admits that he does it because it's fun. It's got to change, and it's got to start with all of us, and I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
That was so passionately and emotionally spoken that I believe we should just take a moment of quiet and send loving thoughts to those who are hurting, even in our midst. My name is Cindy Daly, and I have had the honor of being a part of these 11 years and sharing with other faith leaders from our community and people who put their passion into not only words but deeds. In 1770, when our country was being formed, Edmund Burke wrote to Thomas Mercer, "The only necessary thing for evil to triumph is for good men, I say people, to do nothing." 200 years later, Martin Luther King Jr. said, "For evil to succeed, all it needs is for good men, good people, to do nothing." 50 years have passed, and we're still challenged by these words. It's not that nothing has changed, but rather to sustain any progress, to advance any cause for justice, we each must do our part every day. No matter how great or small we believe our power to be, we each have the power for change, for kindness, for goodness, for justice. In these next few minutes, I ask you to think, what can you do? What will you do? Having heard these powerful voices, voices of young people, voices of people so passionately working for change, what can you do? And I ask you to find someone next to you, in front of you, beside you, and have some conversation about what you can do now to make change. Let's talk. If you can hear me, say amen. And let this just be the beginning of your conversation and the beginning of rising up. Say amen. Amen. And will the choir come forward? Amen.
If I can help somebody as they pass along. If I can cheer somebody with a word and a song. If I can show somebody that they're traveling wrong, and my living will not be in vain. Well, it really doesn't matter most of the deeds I've done. It really doesn't matter the prizes I may have won. I'd like somebody to say I tried to love someone, and my living will not be in vain. In the crawl for justice, I helped somebody run. In the walk for the hungry, I fed someone. In the march for peace, tell them I played the drum. And my living will not be in vain. If I can help somebody as they pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word of song, if I can show somebody that they're traveling on, then my living will not be in vain. I'd like for somebody to say, I tried to love someone, and my living will not be in vain. Franz Robert on piano.
So much to do, so much to say, but we're drawing to an end. I want to use this moment to let you know that the Root and Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity and Lost River will all have tables downstairs. If you want some ideas about what you can do or who you can work with, they are there and they are ready to talk. So we'd love to have you come down after the service. We now are going to ask you to put your money where your mouth is. We have two organizations that have worked in an undaunted way in this community for far longer than 11 years. That's the Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity and the Root Social Justice Center. Offerings tonight will be split between those two great organizations, and I hope you will speak with them downstairs to find out a little bit more about how you can help. So without further ado, and with a little bit more of beautiful music from Franz, I would invite you now to make an offering to this work that we've been singing about and talking about tonight.
gave this prayer on March 9th, 1965, during a march for voting rights that involved persons of different age groups, races, religions, and socioeconomic groups. It was adapted slightly for this evening. The offering tonight will go to support the important work of the Root Social Justice Center and the Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity. Almighty God, thou hast called us to walk for freedom, even as thou did the children of Israel. We pray, dear God, as we go through a wilderness of division and conflict, that thou will go with us and strengthen us for the task. Keep us strong. Keep us calm. Help us to love our enemy. And above all, keep the fires of freedom burning in our hearts so that no matter what happens, ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. Because thou, dear God, hast sent us into this place. Thou hast sent us to fight, not just for ourselves, but to fight for this nation, so that democracy might exist here for the whole world. Keep this vision in our hearts, and may we one day wake up and find the United States to be a nation where all men and all women might vote, where all children might get a decent education, where every man and woman might have a job according to his or her abilities, and where every man and woman might live together as brothers and sisters, and that violence and bloodshed and hatred and prejudice shall be no more. Amen.
We're going to sing today. We're not going to sing someday. We're going to sing today.
May I ask that as you receive the light, just the one receiving, tip your candle to light and then pass the light along.
Thank you, everyone. hope we can all feel it. Today, we're not alone. Go forward in peace and with hope. And if you're hungry, come have some dinner. Amen.
Amen.